Hello, everyone. Welcome to Evolving into the New Normal. Can everyone hear me? I hope so. Yes, thank you. I'm Rabbi David Barron, and I'm really thrilled to tell all of us that my very dear friend Michael Fitzpatrick, such a gifted cellist, was able to grace the opening of our program with his music. Michael's just such an outstanding artist. He was the chairman of an amazing musical event in Aspen, Colorado called Earth's Call, responding to the healing of the earth through music. And this was held under the music festival tent in Aspen, Colorado, with leading artists from around the world participating. And Michael's just such a gifted artist. Thank you, Michael, for your participation in this and for your gift. You've played for heads of state and presidents and monarchs and the Pope and the Dalai Lama. And you've given that gift of music to so many. And we thank you for that. And it's opened the hearts to compassion, which is something we're striving to accomplish as well today through this webinar. And I'm really honored to have in this webinar Sister Jenna and Miranda McPherson, who I'm going to introduce more formally a little bit later. But I'd like to start out by talking a little bit about something that really touched me and that resonated with me during the presidential inauguration. A poem was read by the youth poet laureate Amanda Gorman entitled "The Hill We Climb." And there was one reference in there that really touched me as it said, "And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first. We must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another." To me, that was a wonderful quote from a beautiful poem that she delivered so eloquently. And it speaks to what opening the heart of compassion is all about for so many of us. And many of us have had that sense of dread and anxiety between the fear of this COVID disease that's taken so many lives and that has affected so many of us in so many different ways, from fear to loneliness to depression. And then the resultant lockdowns, which were the effort at trying to forestall the spread of the disease, then having a whole series of ancillary impacts, especially among children who can't go to school and interact with their classmates like so many of us did when we grew up. That to me, it was really essential that we find a way forward and that we are able to focus on healing and on reaching the next level. One of the great honors of my life was participating in a charter that was organized by Karen Armstrong. It was called the Charter for Compassion. It was a TED event. And what Karen tried to do was achieve a universal charter on compassion, because so many people recognize that in various faith traditions, compassion was a central element. And there had to be a way of writing, like there was a charter on the United Nations, on human rights. There had to be a way of compiling a charter that highlighted compassion in each of the different faith traditions. And she did this by reaching out to people, and people came in and they responded, and it was very powerful. So I'd like to focus a little bit on what are the tools or techniques that we can implement in our lives to see the future, to see a future beyond the pandemic, and also to find a way to reach to one another, even though we can't physically embrace, find a way that we can spiritually embrace each other. And not just those of us who we agree with, that's always easy, but especially those who we disagree with, politically, socially, and in other ways. That's the only way forward for us as a nation, as a people, is to be able to embrace one another, even though we have glaring differences. So I guess 30%, according to some recent studies of Americans, seem to be anxiety ridden, if not depressed, in a state of sadness and anxiety. How do we help each other come out of that? And so a number of different authors have given us techniques or tips for achieving that. And some of them I felt were really useful, one of which I implement in my personal practice in the Jewish tradition. As a rabbi, morning and evening, we recite the central declaration of faith, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And what I've done is expanded that morning ritual to give thankfulness, a thankfulness prayer, as I sit outside, weather permitting, and take in the beauty of nature, breathe deeply, meditate before reciting that prayer, and acknowledging my thankfulness for all of my senses and for my ability to imbibe the beauty of God's creation. Then I look forward to the evening, and I'm really more of a shower kind of guy. I never was into baths or bath salts. I never used them. I bathed in the Dead Sea in Israel, but I never really used the Dead Sea salts. Now I've become a significantly qualified expert on bath salts. And I look forward to drawing a bath every night and creating a special environment where I'm disconnected from everything. And I sit there in darkness, perhaps with one candle, and I soak in those Epsom and Dead Sea salts and other salts, including Himalayan pink salt. And it relaxes me and prepares me for the refreshment and renewal that I hope to take from a good night's sleep. And I think these practices are so important, especially now. And they are things that we have to take with us into our new future. And that will be a future that will be filled with life in every sense of the word. But we can't leave behind the opportunity that was given to us now by this dreadful disease to focus inward. And we're going to hear a bit about that from Sister Jenna and from Miranda in just a few moments. The other element that is really critical for me is to not do what some writers call doom scrolling, the tendency to build your anxiety with news reports. And I think all of the news media are guilty of this, because what sells a story? Dog bites man? No, the story is man bites dog. So the media is intrinsically driven by anxiety producing stories. And we have to be able to cut the cord and turn that off in our lives to be able to really disconnect from anxiety provoking experiences. There's been enough between the bitterness of politics, the election, the anxiety many people had over the election process itself, and that we need to distance ourselves a bit and recover and replenish. And that's done by the rituals we implement in our lives. So, what I offer to everyone is some heartfelt advice on how to come through this time and evolve and grow into the next normal, the next phase of what a post-pandemic life will look like. As we begin to increase the number of people with antibodies and increase the number of men and women who are children who are vaccinated, we'll get to a place where we've built an immunity so that we can begin to resume these activities. The greatest gift is if we can resume what used to be a life in a new way, and in the next way, better put, in the next way, that will enable us to incorporate spiritual practice into our lives. It's been too missing. And I find that people who have a spiritual foundation seem to weather these storms. They seem to find the source of resiliency in their lives. So this is what we offer to you through this webinar. That was the purpose of this webinar. And I want to thank Diana Maxwell for helping to organize this with Donna Schumann and a number of others who assisted in this process. And we hope that as you hear these words, you will incorporate these practices into your personal life so they become part of you and part of what you will take with you to move forward. The last point I want to make is how we move forward. I want to see us move forward as one people, as one humanity. And the only way we can accomplish that, as I said earlier, is by embracing one another, especially those with whom we disagree. You know, there's a beautiful Hebrew word which means loving kindness. It's chesed. And the real test of loving kindness is not loving someone like you, it's loving someone who's not like you, learning to accept them on every level. And I hope we'll grow in acceptance and compassion. And that's something that we'll carry with us into the next phase, that we're entering together as one people, as one nation, as one humanity. So thank you for listening to me. And I'd like to now bring on someone really magnificent, Sister Dr. Jenna, an acclaimed spiritual mentor, bridging the divides in society, building relationships between global influencers. She's impacted the lives of so many around the world and brought about change and finding solutions to current day crises. She's the founder and director of the Brahma Kumaris Meditation Museums located in Metro Washington. And Sister Dr. Jenna is also the host of a popular America meditating radio show. She served as the principal partner in the Oprah Winfrey Network and Values Partnerships on the Belief team. And as the global pandemic has shifted the way we are all seeing ourselves around the world and the world around us, it's affected every aspect of our lives. And as we start to resume some of our previous activities, rather than a new normal, which implies something new and current, which ultimately becomes old, we'll transition to the next normal, a movement leading forward beyond the new, creating rational optimism that acknowledges the hard realities and rebuilds the foundations of the future innovation and invention. You know, during a crisis, it's easy to say things will never be the same again, but inner perspective is needed in the face of these dire predictions. People want to trust. They want compassion, stability, and hope to manage their stress levels. And a daily practice of meditation has the astonishing capacity of healing and calming the body, quieting the mind, and opening up those channels through which healing can flow. And so it's my great pleasure now to call on Sister Dr. Jenna to share with us her perspective.
Thank you, Rabbi David. That was very kind, very sweet of you. Hello, everyone. Shalom, Salam Alaikum, and Om Shanti. I'm so glad that you took the time to tune into our conversation today, which I'm sure will be a very timeless piece for all of us for many, many years to come. I'd like to invite us to hold a minute of silence. In the United States of America, over 400 lives, souls, have departed their bodies because of COVID. And I must say, a few days ago, when the newly elected President of the United States, Joe Biden, and Dr. Jill Biden, along with Vice President Kamala Harris and First Gentleman Doug, when they went to the Lincoln Memorial to pay tribute to those lives, compassion was reeking through every bit of our bodies. I mean, we were just so touched by that act of compassion. So I know that during the pandemic we have so many options of Zoom sessions that we can tune into and all of those great things. But can I ask you to just have us hold just a few seconds of compassion and love and peace, not only for the souls who have departed, but for the families left behind. And also for the leadership that is now shaping themselves for the United States. That the purest of wishes and vibrations surrounds them in everything that they do. So thank you for that. Thank you very dearly.
Thank you.
Rabbi David, you couldn't be more right. I don't think we're really moving into a new normal because it does get old. But the question is, what's next? What's next for you, for 333 million residents of the United States, 7.4 billion residents of the planet Earth? What's next? History has told us what actually destroys a civilization. It's a lack of values and virtues. It's not because you don't have enough money. It's not because of weapons of war. It's because individuals perhaps have become distracted from their greatest power. And the greatest power is to be a soul with virtues and with values. Imagine being in a position of such great leadership of a country, a company, or even of a family. And your fundamental choice, your only choice, is to speak with compassion and with virtues. It's to look at that person through your eyes, recognizing that behind your eyes there is a universe of thoughts and words and experiences and attainments that are actually connecting to another soul. And what if our next normal is really about becoming more soul aware, so that we can bring the energy of God's consciousness here in everyone's life? The other day, a little boy asked me, he's about 12 years old, "Why is God so mean?" he asked me. I go, "Why did you say God is so mean?" He goes, "Aren't we all children of God? So why is he so mean that he makes the so-and-so so ugly and so mean? That means God is mean." How do you answer that? As a 12-year-old, when he looks at a certain society of people being so mean with each other, and he accepts that they're also God's children. So why are they being so mean? So why is God mean? Was his question to me. And I had to pause for a moment, everyone. I literally had to take a breath and go, what a great question. Yeah, why is, I call God Baba. I go, why is Baba so mean? And it's nothing to do with God's meanness. I think the energy of God's vibration is so powerfully pure and so beautiful. I think we're just not focusing on the love that comes from Source. So I had to tell him that sometimes when you're in a classroom, do you pay attention all the time to the teacher? He goes, I don't. Well, you're being mean when you don't pay attention to the teacher. And I think what happens, many of us that kind of take our eyes off of the prize, and we take our eyes off of the source of God's love and just the pure vibration of God's presence in our lives, we become mean. We lack compassion. We think only about I, me, and mine. But there is a saving grace in all that, because when we hold a moment of stillness, and I've said this over and over again, when you put your head on your pillow, you will know the way you're living. Because when you're relaxed or when you're getting quiet, every thought, word, action, choice, or behavior that you performed against your normal peace, your natural peace, will disturb your mind. And what concerns me about the next normal is about some of my brothers and sisters who might be running away instead of facing the disturbance of their minds. You know, because sometimes there just isn't the courage to look at the light that they really are. And so it's easier for some of my brothers and sisters to turn their attention away from their divinity and their beauty and their light and find even a tribal herd of people, a herd of people who share the same sentiments or the same vibration, so it doesn't give them a chance to really respond to what those quiet thoughts or what those loud thoughts signaled to them when their head hit the pillow. And while I think the next normal is a spiritual one, I think looking at the government of the United States being this complete stark difference of what we had a few weeks ago, and looking at the empathy and the compassion and the interest, and I want to emphasize that, the interest to help and to be of service to all people, such a huge testimony that we are moving towards a good age, a golden age, a new age, something that can definitely invite the whole world in. As we gather together today as three friends with all of you today on this day, I believe it's our pure intent that we really take this time to settle into the best part of our consciousness, that part behind your eyes, that part in the soul that has space for a love that's pure, but for a vibration that we call in Hindi sato or sato pradhan, but this vibration of a sato pradhan awareness to forge in you. Sato, pure, pradhan, complete, which means my thoughts, words, choices, connections, relationships, earning, spending money, has this intent of purity. And so imagine when we can actually begin to resonate and feel that that is a very big part of who we are and who we are to become in our next normal. Because when a new world and a better world is opening up for all of us, then we have to match the fragrance of that new world. And so perhaps the next normal will require characters and personalities that have this sweetness, this purity, this compassion and empathy and we-ness in it. And it could be a future that really gives us the feeling of safety after not feeling safe for so long. So as we continue with our discussions today, and I hand it over to Rabbi David so that he can interview my beautiful friend Miranda, I'm really inviting you to take some notes and pause during this time together with us and try to observe what's coming out of you or up in you as we share our thoughts and our feelings with you. Rabbi David?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That was so eloquently said, looking behind the eyes into the soul. And, I wish we could see more of each other on a day-to-day basis by unmasking. But if we try to look into the eyes, we'll see the soul of our brother and sister. Now, before we do a conversation among us, we want to hear from Miranda. And Miranda, who's the expert in sheltering in grace, as these challenging and uncertain times continue, we need resources that a spiritual practice provides us more than ever, so we can take shelter in the place where it can be found, the luminous presence at the core of our being. For over 30 years, Miranda McPherson has been guiding others into grace, a direct experience of the sacred. And she will share more about what grace is exactly and why it's such an important key to transforming suffering into wisdom and growing in resiliency. She'll share how you can gain access to deeper ground, find calm amidst the chaos, and receive the spiritual nourishment that's always available, even with COVID-19, even with social unrest. Miranda is an interfaith minister and spiritual teacher and author who founded the One Spirit Interfaith Foundation in London, where she trained and ordained over 600 ministers and counselors. It's my pleasure to welcome to us today with us, Miranda. Miranda.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Sister Jenna. Well, everything that I feel is so important right now, it really is a continuation of the conversation that we've just been hearing from Rabbi David and Sister Jenna about the urgent need for our higher virtues, the virtues of our deepest humanity, to really come into the foreground. And I would phrase that as that in these times where we've all been going through so much, and when there's still a lot of unknowns and uncertainties to come, there's a very real need for more of us to become more graceful human beings. So being graceful is an enormous task. It sounds lovely, it sounds beautiful, our heart feels yes, but what does that really mean? To be a graceful human being who's capable of being flexible with the winds of change, of regarding everything that life is bringing as an invitation to evolve or grow or learn or let go, to learn to say yes rather than no to what is asked of us, and to let our highest values and virtues shine forth in ways that don't just bring peace of mind to ourselves and our family, but that help radiate that human goodness forward further and deeper into life. For me, that's what's important right now, and the more of us who can join in that stream, the better. So what I've found to be so important is to recognize that wherever I am on the spiritual path, wherever anyone I sit with is in their spiritual path, there is grace to help us go further and deeper. So what is grace exactly? Grace is hard to pin down, but it really is that which we can't really fully name. It is the living presence of the divine that is what is the source of everything. It's what birthed you into existence. It's what causes us to draw breath. It's the very source of our love and our goodness and those virtues. And the good news is it's more available than we might think. Ramana Maharshi, a great Hindu sage who has inspired me greatly, he said this. He said, "You think of grace as something high in the sky that has to descend, but grace is always present. When you let the mind subside back into its source, grace rushes forth, sprouting as if a spring from within you." So really what he's saying is that when we turn our attention to what is foundational, to the fact that right now we are breathing clean air because of the profound compassion and love and goodness of the plant kingdom that is lovingly sucking in human carbon dioxide and transmuting that into life-giving oxygen without us needing to worry about whether we earn it or deserve it. We notice that there are so many things that happen naturally that are really, when we look at how come that is, how come we love the people we love, what we really are brought back to is grace, this intelligence and love that's the core of everything. So just take a moment and consider your experience of this. It sounds very lofty, I know. But maybe you've had a moment where perhaps you were on the freeway and you really came close to having a pretty bad crash, only somehow, by something you can't quite name, you were shepherded from harm and everything was fine. You may have even said, there but for the grace of God. Or if you've ever had the privilege of being at the birth of someone or the death of someone, you get it. Your heart, your mind is pierced open to realize that you have never been the doer, the driver, the director of the show. Something profound, majestic, pure, beautiful is living us and moving us and inviting us to evolve, inviting us to rise into our highest nature. So I call this grace. It is the ground of our being. It is also the gifts, the lessons, the blessings that come into our life, as if something knows us better than we do, knows what we need more than we do. And it is also the agency of transformation. Just like a waterfall, a powerful body of water will smooth out the rough edges of a rock over time, so grace is the mystery of transformation itself that smooths out our rough edges and helps us address our issues and our obstacles so that our density, our suffering, our ignorance can get transformed into deeper wisdom. And of course, that wisdom wants to be embodied, lived, so that the living water of that goodness can quench and nourish and hydrate our tired and parched earth that's in need of a very good drink. So I don't ask you to take my word for this. Probably what's best at this point is just for us to turn more substantially within and to encounter this parallel universe that is always here, even though on the surface or on the outside things might be challenging or difficult. Nevertheless, at the very core of our being, we can find this luminosity, this source of all peace and goodness and love. And it is here where we can always find refuge and shelter and draw from that depth that is the source of it all. So I invite you perhaps to close your eyes and just turn more substantially within. And begin by just taking a couple of long, slow, deep breaths. Just receiving the sound. Just receiving the way the chair or whatever your body touches welcomes and cradles you. Receive the love of each in-breath. And notice how each exhale is a natural surrender if you let it be. Bring your focus to the heart. And feel, see, or sense a luminous golden magnet at the very back of your heart. And just as iron shavings are effortlessly drawn by a magnet to itself, feel this luminous gold at your core, drawing you back. Drawing you back to your virtues, your inherent goodness, what within you is prior to conditioning. Feel that gold radiating all the way down and all the way up, becoming like a golden rod through your center line. Grounding you in the infinite. Reconnecting you to that within you that is pure, untainted, unalterably real. Here you are connected with all that is real and true about everyone. And sense an even deeper universal magnet behind the one in your heart. The pure gold of truth that draws us all back to itself. Here, we remember what we are. Here, peace and stillness reign supreme. Here, we are also connected, blessed by all kinds of subtle forces, celestial beings, all the love of our ancestors. And we are blessed. And so we just take some deep breaths, as if inwardly saying yes and thank you. Recognizing what always is and what it is that supports us to be noble, beautiful, graceful human beings in our world. And so it is.
Miranda, thank you for that soul-stirring meditation, guided meditation, which took me off into another realm, the realm of grace. Thank you for that gift.
Yes, thank you.
Now, you know that a friend of mine told me recently, he said he'd never see the day when he would walk into a bank with a mask on and ask for money. All of us are wearing these masks which divide us. And as Sister Jenna was saying earlier, the eyes are the window to the soul. We peer through the eyes to see one another's soul and our common humanity and strip away. The sadness is we don't get to see the beautiful facial expressions, the smiles, the pursing of lips, the whole complexion of the human face, which reflects our humanity to one another. But I think we can overcome that, and we are overcoming that. What I'd like to pose to each of you is a question. I'd like to ask each of you to offer some heartfelt advice, or if you will, a prescription for some of our participants who are expressing tremendous loneliness They feel completely alone. This pandemic has separated them from loved ones who they're unable to embrace. And even though we have technology and the digital means of doing that, they're feeling disconnected. What heartfelt advice, and I'll start with Sister Jenna, can you offer as a prescription to help people who are feeling that tremendous sense of loneliness and disconnection?
It's funny, just before coming into the studio, I was talking to some young ladies upstairs, and one of them was sharing that she lives alone, and the only thing is that on occasion she feels lonely. And there was another young lady who was married with 2 children, and I turned to the young lady that lives alone and I said, I guarantee you, even though she has a husband and 2 children and the house is full, aren't there times that you also feel lonely? And she said, definitely, almost all the time, she said as well. And I said that feeling lonely is actually a very natural feeling. I think that if we feel that feeling lonely starts to give you some sort of a interpretation that you're isolated, I don't feel loved, nobody cares, nobody knows I exist, or even that you don't feel an intimate connection with another human being that you can reach out to and just call and say hello. I think the prescription that I would offer is journaling. I find that many times when I'm having moments by myself, intimate moments, or moments where I'm not feeling so great, and I don't really feel I can turn to anyone, I journal. And not just journal, but I also have this habit of recording on my smartphone how I'm feeling. And what surprises me is when I play it back, it gives me an insight as to the depth of the energy that I'm in. But it also gives me an opportunity to decide if I want to stay there or if I want to change it.
Miranda, what would you offer? I'm sorry, did I interrupt you, Sister Jenna?
No, it was just that if I want to change it, that, we don't have to stay stuck in the loneliness. And I think that we shouldn't feel that we're the only ones feeling that way. Everyone has felt that way. It's just the getting stuck in there. Just a thought, not to stay there.
Yeah, and I'd like to riff on what you've just said, Sister Jenna. That's very beautiful and true. And there are 2 practical things I would suggest. One of them is that when we're struggling in a particular way ourselves, one of the things that I've found to be most helpful is to ask myself the question, who else on the planet might be feeling similarly to me? And who else that I know may be feeling similarly to this? And, of course, my heart immediately opens when I ask that question, and it pops the subtle self-centeredness that's often there within a contraction of suffering where we think we're the only ones, and we're not. And of course, what that brings forth is the virtues of our empathy and our kindness and our desire to be of help to others. And if we can then just think of one tiny little action that we could take that could embody that, even if it's, just putting a nice bottle of wine on the doorstep of a neighbor, or, just writing them a note, wondering how you are, or, how things going for you, anything I can do for you. I'm going to the grocery store. Would you like me to pick up some groceries for you? Just these small acts can really help pierce through not only our own loneliness, but other people's loneliness too. So I found that to be a principle, I call it the service principle, to turn around the ache of loneliness. And I've had quite a lot of it. I've moved to America without knowing a soul. And so I spent a lot of time in the first year of being here not having anybody to talk to because I didn't know anybody. So, that's what really got me through. And the other thing that I think is really helpful and available to most people is just to get out in nature. And inevitably, we happen upon other people if we walk in an open park or something. And just to see if you can walk in nature, but as if you're breathing everything into your heart, as if everything is saying, I love you, as if the trees are saying, I love you, as if the dog, that wags its tail that you happen upon, is an embodiment of love. And just see if you can cultivate that loving kindness that is both coming towards you and that also wants to flow from your heart towards everything and everyone. For me, that works a treat to turn that loneliness around and help me feel connected again, even though it might not be in the ways that I'm used to.
I think these are wonderful, heartfelt prescriptions that I hope everyone's taking to heart. One of the things I like to do, because I believe that, as you've said, it's normal to feel this loneliness. This is a time where, because we're sheltering in place, because we're restricted in our movement, anxiety, loneliness is a natural response. And recognizing that it's not unnatural, that it's quite natural what we're going through. And then seeing what others are doing, that's kind of my prescription. One of the young actresses in the synagogue has been on a campaign to save the wild elephants. And watching her videos and supporting her, sending in a contribution to help her in her efforts, takes me outside of myself and my preoccupation with my immediate surroundings and what is upsetting me or depressing me, and makes me recognize that I can be part of something larger. So I think all of these suggestions, all of this wonderful heartfelt advice, I hope all of the people participating today are taking that in and can implement that. That would be
Can I add something,
please,
David? I
please.
also think this is an incredible time for spiritual practice. I mean, really, I think it's the opportunity of a lifetime. Many people would voluntarily go and put themselves in an ashram to have less distraction and to actually go within. And so, it's a really fantastic time to explore spiritual resources. And now, in this day and age, there are so many spiritual teachers and resources available through various websites, and just to find something that connects you to that loving goodness that actually does dissolve loneliness at the core, and to work with it and to really embrace this time. It won't be forever, but embrace it as a time to really find that gold in your core that is there in all of us. I think it's really an invitation. It's an opportunity. So I think that's also another way to turn around the loneliness.
Yes. Sister Jenna, do you want to add anything to that?
What came to mind was please get off of your social media. It's just,
Amen.
it's just going to mess you up thinking that you're missing something. And unless what you're doing on your social media is a sense of, you want to offer of service. So you want to be of service by expressing a particular talent or a story or something that you think is beautiful to share to make the world a better place, then of course, by all means, do it and post it. But if you keep training your brain to keep seeing images of various people doing things and looking at the likes and how many followers and who looks all dressed up and who looks, like that, or if you keep looking at things that are trying to make you think your life is useless, or it makes you think like you don't have anything happening with you. Look at you. Look at what you're up to. It's an illusion. It's not real. Instead of using your time in that, just go inwards and start journaling. Talk to yourself. Record what's going on inside of you. Play it back, and then see where some adjustments can occur.
I know that all of this advice is so powerful. One of the things that's been helping me is that this time has enabled me to address my creativity. And because my work deals with spiritual practice, and in studying the Kabbalah, I recognized there was an opportunity to create an experience which I've been working on called Midnight Confession and Correction. And the custom was at the new moon that there would be a prayer service of correction. And I've now adapted this, and I'm going to be bringing it out in a website and a really special experience for those who participate in it. And it was during this time that that was birthed. And I don't know if it would have been birthed in another time. It's possible. But this time allowed me the opportunity to create that. And I think this is a powerfully creative time for all of us as well, if we'll focus on the opportunity rather than look at it as a tragedy or as something that is a source of anxiety. So, have any of you had creative insights or projects that have come to fruition during this time?
Miranda, you want to go first?
Yeah,
Because I just bubble with creativity. I don't even know what to do with my creativity.
yeah, for me too. I mean, it's been an explosion of creativity. I've been working on a new mantra album. I've been taking my book, The Way of Grace, and turning it into a deck of inspirational cards. It's been so much fun. And so, as I was saying, I really do think that not to diminish the suffering and the difficulty at the same time, there's just change afoot. The landscape of our world and our inner life is inviting change. And if we're open to that, if we learn to say yes rather than no, then, there can be new things bubbling up that we didn't know were there because perhaps there wasn't enough space before. So, yes, I mean, and I think that's, if we're befriending rather than resisting change, then we're open to new possibilities. And what comes inherently with new possibilities is creativity and inspiration.
Well, I want to
Also,
make, yes, please, Jenny.
the I also feel like the next normal is going to be about a lot of the arts, creativity, music, dance, poetry, theater. When we closed our meditation museums on March 16th last year, I wasn't expecting that by this particular period, we would have filmed over 250 episodes. I mean, where do I even get the information from in my head? I have no idea. But what happens is that when I'm going into my place of inner stillness, because I have that introspection in the ashram, is that I'm able to see things from a different perspective. And every night when I show up on my evening program for the next normal, something comes up like, yeah, this is soul, this is it. The other thing, Rabbi David and Miranda, that I have been loving, and I just want to get further into it, is producing films. Films with incredible stories. So I did a short film on Zoom meditation, and then I did another one called The Diwali Dance, where you dance your sorrows away. And it had a lot of children involved. Can I tell you, I felt like 15, 16 again. And I was just in heaven with that production. And I enjoyed hearing people go, well, I don't know if that's the most spiritual thing you should be doing. I go, I don't know if that's really the comment you should be making to me right now.
Well, I think, though, that
I mean, what is,
We
no, I'm
are
just giving you an
vibrational.
idea how sometimes people miss what is spirituality. It's giving
exactly.
joy, and
Yes.
you're not hurting anyone. You're making people feel better. Then go on ahead, fast forward.
We have Michael Fitzpatrick is going to take us out. But before we do, I want to give my heartfelt thanks to Sister Jenna and to Miranda McPherson for being a part of this. This is a kickoff of an ongoing series, and we'll be holding other fascinating people to hear their heartfelt advice and direction on evolving and emerging into the new normal. And all of this helps us. It helps us heal. After all, who are we? As one of our prayers says, we are light and truth. We are infinite wisdom and eternal goodness. And as long as we resonate with our true core, this is the message we'll bring to one another. a message of unity, a message of compassion. So I thank you for being a part of this. And right now we're going to go out, Diana tells me, with that beautiful music from cellist Michael Fitzpatrick. And thank you again. Peace. Shalom. Thank you, Miranda.
Thank
And Sister
you.
Jenna, I look forward to staying in touch. Take care. God bless.
Okay.
Thank
We'll be in
you.
Absolutely.
touch. We'll be in touch.
All the very best.